What's up guys, welcome back to another Minecraft video. Today we're going to be not in Minecraft, we're going to be in Fusion 360 and we're going to be making a custom rook piece in Fusion 360. Alright, now if you haven't watched the first part already, which is us making the pawn piece in Fusion 360, then I would recommend you watch that first, but if you have enough Fusion experience then you can probably just start on this one. So let's get into it. Alright, and this is going to be a custom rook piece because last time we made a pretty standard pawn, but this one's going to be kind of new. Alright, so if you can remember from last video, we started off just by looking at pictures of rooks, or pictures of pawns, and we're going to do a similar thing this time, where I'm just going to look at some pictures of what rooks look like. And I think that this is honestly a pretty standard idea of what a rook should look like. Or honestly, I think this one really shows you what a rook is supposed to look like. It's got that bottom part and then curves up again. It's got all these different pieces. So I'm just going to go into my paint app and then try and sort of sketch out this from what I just had. Right, so I have this tall part on top and then these I think they're called like portcullises. Let me check if that's correct. Nope, that's a gate. It's just a defense thing, yeah. Anyway, it looks sort of like a tower, so you got this rounded part, and then another rounded part down here, and then straight flat down into a cylinder at the bottom. Alright, so from that we can get a few different parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 different parts. But aside from these 5 parts, I want to add a little bit of spice to this one, because obviously we can't just do a normal rook, right? This is a competition we're talking about here. So if I was designing this for a competition, I'd want to add a little bit of flair into it. So what's a way that I could do that? Well, you got to think about like what naturally would go on a rook. A rook looks like a tower, right? So why don't we just look at a normal medieval tower? And so I brought up a picture of a castle tower here, and you can see there's a few things that we can add in. Alright, so first of all, you have sort of these tall windows that we can add in. That's pretty cool. And then put in a gate as well. Maybe, yeah, over here a gate looks pretty good. And then we can make these parts sloped like they have up here. And then, let's see, beyond that, why don't we put a brick pattern in as well, and that'll make our thing look a little bit more like a castle tower. So once that's done, that's sort of the idea that I'm going to have going into this rook design. So now that we have the sketch done, let's go into Fusion 360, and this is the pawn we did last time, and I'm just going to make a new design, starting from part design. Now, when I'm making the base piece, which on my drawing is going to be piece 5, I want to start from the diameter that I was using last time, because you want all of your chess pieces to have sort of the same diameter on the base. And for me, that diameter was 30 millimeters. So on this one, I'm just going to make it 30 millimeters. So let's just put it 30 millimeters. And then that should be good. And I'm just going to finish the sketch and then bring it up with my extrude tool about 4 millimeters. And that honestly looks pretty good. I'm going to bring it down 1 actually, because I think it was 3 last time. Alright, now that we have this piece done, I'd like to make the rest of these pieces. And I know last time for the pawn we went part by part, so we did this at the bottom, and then this, and this piece, and then this piece, and then this piece. But actually, if you remember, using the revolve tool, we might actually be able to do all of them at once. So let's try to do that. So I'm going to do the fourth part. So we're going to go up. 7 millimeters seems good, and then I'm going to come out by about, let's say 8, I think, or maybe 9. Let's go 9 millimeters, and then let's go with a fit point. Actually, let's go at 10. So remember, you can always revert your sketches with Control-Z, which is how I'm editing this fast. And then I'm going to use the spline tool, switch from the straight line to the spline, and then make a sort of curve shape. And that looks pretty good. And then once you have your spline done, remember just to close off the shape so you'll be able to actually revolve it. And that looks pretty good. So once we have the shape, I'm just going to revolve it around here. But actually, let's not do that yet, because I was planning to make the whole thing as a sketch and then revolve it all at once. So let's move on to the next part. So once I already have my sketch done, how do I go back to it? Well, all I have to do is come down here to the bottom to my timeline and then press Edit Sketch. So right click on this and then go to Edit Sketch, and that should allow me to edit the sketch. Alright, so I'm just gonna do the next part here, which I think was like a little bit of an incline bit over here. And you can see I did that on the pawn as well with this. But something I didn't like that I did on the pawn was that this is kind of too steep for the incline part. If you look on the actual pictures, it's really not that large of an incline. It's a very mediocre, flat looking slope. So I'm just going to do something a little bit flatter, like so. And I think that should be fine. So I went in 1 millimeter on that, and then that should be our slope part done. Alright, now let's do the next piece, which is this part 3. So we're done with these two already. And now let's get on to making the part 3. So where do I want this to end? I'm going to first define the height first that I want, because I'm not really sure. I think this might be a little bit tall. Let's try 30 millimeters first and see where that brings us. So 30 millimeters, and then I'm going to come out by about this much on my slope. I think that looks good. And you'll notice that actually not all of the pieces are sloped directly. Like this is sloped straight, but look at this rook right here. This one is curved a little bit. And you can do really either one if you want. You can do the curved one with a spine, or you can just do the straight one like I'm doing. But I'm doing the straight one because it's going to be important for the bricks later, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. Alright, now, moving on to the next part, we have this piece over here. So, it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to pull up the picture again, and let's use this one, why not? There's like a little bit of a circle, or like a disc, and then it goes sloped up, and then you get to your castle thing. So to do that, I'm honestly just going to do this. I'm going to bring this out, and then create a circle on the end. And you see how there's a bunch of lines here. I don't want to really deal with all that. I would have to select all of it if I was extruding it, so I'm just going to use my trim tool and just get rid of all that clutter. And now it's just one solid shape that I can extrude on something. Alright, so moving on to the next piece, we have the top slope. So I'm just going to slope that up, probably like this much, maybe a little bit more. Let's go for another square. And that's going to bring me to 7.5 millimeters. That seems pretty good to me. Let's see. Just comparing that to the normal rook. We could go a little farther out. I think this is fine though. I'm going to go a little bit farther out. Go another square. That'll bring us to 8 millimeters. Alright. And then finally, for the last part, we have the part where it starts to go vertical. And I'm just going to create a rectangle for that. Alright, that looks pretty good. And then I don't really want to select all of these because it's like 7 different pieces, so I'm just going to go in with my trim tool and delete everything down the middle. There we go. And then finish the sketch. Now we have this shape, and I'm just going to revolve it around this center line. And that actually looks pretty good. Alright, yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Although I do think the top could be a little larger, but we can fix that in a second, and I'll show you how. Alright, so now that that's done, I'm going to work on the top part now. And this is kind of interesting because we can't just revolve to get this top part since there's these square things that we have to put in. So how should I do this? Well, Fusion 360 has this pretty cool tool, and it's called the circular pattern. So I'm just going to create one of those pieces, and if you can imagine, I'm just going to make like one of these, and then I'm going to paste it 5 more times to get the rest of that. So let's see, I'm going to make the outer circle, and then I'm going to make an inner circle, and that's going to be like 14, I'll do 13 millimeters. And then I'm going to make a line and another line that's about 30 degrees off. So I'm going to set this to 150. That's a 30-degree offset, and now you can see here, this is the shape that we want. Alright, so now that we have this shape here, I'm just going to extrude it upwards about, I think, 3 millimeters seems, I'm going to go 2.5 millimeters, that seems pretty good. And then remember, don't put join here since we're going to copy this a few more times. And if we did join, it would just be one whole, it would be connected to the big body as a whole, and we would be pasting the big body like 6 times. And that just gets pretty messy. So instead of doing join, I'm going to make this its own separate body. Now that we have this as its own separate body, I'm going to use a circular pattern. So go to create, and then down here to pattern, circular pattern, and then select on just this body. Now select axis and then the center line. And you'll see here that it's made a bunch of them. And that's actually exactly what I want. So I'm going to go OK. 10 seems like a little much. I'm going to do 8. Maybe 9. 9 seems pretty good. And that looks pretty good. And now all I have to do is combine the big body down below with all of these up here. And that should link all of them together. And OK. And you see here I missed one. So combine. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Now, I'm looking at it now, and honestly, the top is seeming a little small compared to these other rooks out here. So I'm going to do a little bit of a switch. And how I'm going to do that is by enlarging how big this top part is. So how would I enlarge the top part? Well, a cool thing that I can do in Fusion 360 is I can actually scale the size of parts. But I don't want to scale the whole thing because that would just make the whole thing bigger. I only want to do the top part. So I'm going to make an offset plane and make it go down to here, exactly where it cuts off at the neck, right? And then once I have that, I can split this body using the split body tool and select the plane as my splitting face. And you can see it's almost like cutting that body in 2 pieces. Now, once I have this as a separate body, I can go into modify, scale, and then I can scale this however I want. So I'm gonna make this maybe 1.2 times bigger, maybe 1.15. I think 1.15 looks pretty good, but oh no, once I scaled this, it's kind of offset now, like it's not exactly there. So I'm just going to move it up with my move tool, and then bring it back down with the point-to-point move. So remember, when you're doing point-to-point in your move tool, you don't have to select just the middle point. You can just select the outer circle, and it'll automatically assume that it's the middle point. And then I'm going to do that again on the base, and bam, it's connected again. And you can see, compared to before, that's actually pretty good. And remember, once we split the bodies, we have to remember to put them back together. So I'm going to use the combine tool to just add the pieces back together. And let's hide this construction plane since I don't want to look at it anymore. So just go down into construction and click the eye thing next to the plane tool. Alright, now that looks pretty good. And if we want to compare it to before, we can just go down into the timeline, drag this back, and that actually looks a lot better than before. Yeah, I would say that does look quite a bit better. Alright, so now let's get into some of the modifications that we're going to make. So we had a few of them planned out: the windows, the bricks, and the gate. Which one's the easiest? I would say probably the bricks, or the hardest. So we're just going to do the bricks first. Alright. Now, how are we going to do the bricks? Because this one's actually kind of interesting. How do you take this sloped and rounded surface and just push it in? If it was just a flat wall and I wanted to make some bricks, then I would just use a sketch and extrude them all back. But you can't extrude on a circular face because it's round, and also it's sloped. So how are we going to do this? Well, there's a few ways, and the best way I found for doing this is, first we're going to make a sketch along here, along one of the horizontal planes, and I'm going to slice the sketch. And what this does is, you can see it quite literally just slices it in half. And if I disable it, it brings it back, right? So it allows me to see what the cross section of our little rook guy looks like right now. Alright, so now that we have this guy sliced, I kind of want the geometry of this, so I know where to make the incisions. And what I'm doing right now is I'm making the horizontal incisions. So if you can imagine, on a stack of bricks, there are the horizontal lines and there are the vertical lines. And I'm just going to be doing the horizontal lines right now. So I want the geometry of this so that I can actually make those incisions in. And so I'm just going to press P. I could just draw this out by hand, but there's a cool tool you have on Fusion 360 called the project tool. And that makes it so I can just press P and takes the geometry of whatever I have and then makes it into a shape on my sketch. So you can see now I have 4 dots there, there, and there, and it made lines for me as well. So I know where the shape is. Alright. So now that I have those done, I'm just going to make my incisions. So we're just going to take this, going by maybe 1.5 millimeters. Let's do 1 millimeter. And then bring it up by 0.5 millimeters. Maybe 0.7 millimeters. Make sure that's 90 degrees. And then just connect it to this end. Now don't worry about this if it overlaps and you can't exactly get it on the point, because I can just drag it over and then snip off the other end. Never mind. If I just bring it over and make another line along here, or I just make another line like this, and I should just be able to snip off this end. And yeah, I can. Alright. So now that we have this, I don't really want to make all these other horizontal incisions by hand. So what I can do is use a different pattern. It's called the rectangular pattern. And you'll notice that I can actually use these patterns on both the sketches when I'm in sketch mode and outside of sketch mode. So that's pretty useful as well. So all I have to do is select these few objects that I want to make a pattern of. And you can see that if I just bring it up, it shows me what exactly I'm making the pattern of and where the pattern ones will be. So it's making copies of the sketch basically. And there's one along this side as well. And so I don't really want incisions on this side because, like, why would I? You know, I'm trying to make them go upwards. So instead of having 3, I'm just going to set this quantity to 1. And going up, maybe let's try 6. That's probably good. And then bring them all the way up. But you'll notice that, actually let's do 7. Alright, so you'll notice that they're not exactly in the right place because they're supposed to be along the slope. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to select direction, and instead of having it go straight up, I'm going to use this line as my direction line. And that should allow it to be angled. Not quite though, you'll see, because this is actually the wrong way. But I think all we should need to do to fix that is just switch these two values and make this one and make this side. And you can see, wow, perfect. That's actually exactly what I need. So let's just finish that sketch up, and that looks pretty good. Alright, and that should let me make my horizontal incisions. So now that those are done, I'm just going to select all of these and revolve them to make my horizontal incisions. But you'll notice, wait a second, how am I supposed to select these sketches? Because they're inside the body. All I have to do for this is just turn the body off, turn the visibility off, and then select all of these little sketches, and then turn the body back on, and then just revolve them. So now it affects the body. Because remember, if the body isn't visible and I do an extrusion, like a cut or something, it's not going to affect the body at all. So it has to be visible for it to get affected. I'm just going to revolve all these around the center axis, and that is going to give me all of my horizontal incisions. That looks pretty nice, actually. Okay, now it's time for the vertical ones, and this is where it gets kind of confusing. Because you'll remember, a brick wall isn't just like a grid, it's not straight horizontals, right? You have like sort of these layered horizontal incisions. So how do we want to do this? Well, since I made these flat, I'm actually just going to make a sketch on here. And so I'm going to make a sketch on this bottom face. And now I can't really see what I'm sketching on here, so I'm just going to slice it again. And now I can see I'm sketching on this one. So what exactly do I want? I want bricks that are like maybe probably 4 bricks per row. So I'm just going to make 4 lines. But I actually don't need 4 lines because I can just do a circular revolve. So I'm going to keep it at 175 degrees, and then for 9 millimeters. And I'm going to do that on this side as well. At 175. Which is strange. 175. Or I can just do 85. That should be the same. And then 9 millimeters. And yeah, that's good. So if you can imagine, that is our shape for our vertical incision. Alright. And I'm just going to cut this out so it's a little bit easier. And now that we have that, we have to copy it a few more times around. But I don't really want to do that by hand, so I'm just going to use this circular pattern again. So take this piece, and I think that's all we need. Select the center point, and then I'm going to change this to 8. And that's actually perfect, because if you can imagine, if we want 4 bricks on each side, then 8 is going to be perfect for this, because we need them to be staggered, right? So I'm going to have 8 of these, except it's giving me an error. Creating a recovery thing has failed. That's fine. I'll just save it after. Okay, that looks pretty good. And once I let it load, there you go. You have 8 incisions going around. And now that I have those on the bottom, I'm just going to do it on the top as well. So, create a sketch, slice, and then do a similar thing. And honestly, we can just copy what we did last time, because you can see we still have our lines here. And set this to 85 degrees. And That should be good. So set this to 95 degrees, and then we just cut off our end bits here and here, and circular pattern these two. Circular pattern around this center point, set to 8, and that gives us the same thing up here. Alright, so now that this is done, I'm going to loft this to this, and that should make a cut. So if I create a loft from here to here, see, perfectly cuts that. And honestly, I don't even need to use all 8, because what I can do is I can rotate the middle sections so that they're a different part. And I'll show you what I mean in a second, because I know that was kind of confusing. So I'm just going to do a bunch of lofts to see if I can get this done. And another thing to note is that if you're doing a bunch of things with one sketch, it's going to disappear after you do the first one. So like I just did a loft right there to cut it, and to get it back I need to open the sketch again so that I have both my sketches, because they disappear after the first one, but if you just do it, if you open them again, make them visible again, then you can just see them. Alright, now let's make another loft right here for another cut. Let's make another cut right here. Let's go with a loft. And finally, let's do a loft over here. Great. And then loft, and then this one up here. Alright, so honestly these bricks are a little bigger than I would have liked, but oh well, I can't really do anything about it. Alright, now let's stagger them. So the way I'm going to stagger these is by cutting this body up into multiple pieces. So I'm going to use the split body tool, and instead of just selecting one plane to cut it along, I'm going to do a bunch of planes. And so I'm just going to do this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And that should be good. You can see all of those cuts I'm doing. Press OK. And now, instead of one body, I have all these different bodies that I can rotate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select every other body and then rotate it. So I'm going to do this one. And revolve it along the center axis, if it lets me. There's actually no center axis here, so I'm going to make my own. It's not showing me where the center axis is, so I'm just going to put a line in the middle, and that's going to be my center axis. Alright, now let's do that again. So take the rotate tool, and then rotate along this axis, and I'm just going to type in 45 degrees. Pretty good. And then let's just keep doing it with this one, and along this axis for 45 degrees, and then last of all this one along the central axis at 45 degrees. And just like that, all of our bricks are done. That actually looks pretty good. And yeah, that's our rook with bricks. Alright, now there are a few other additions I wanted to put in, if you can remember. There was the gate, and there was the top parts being sloped. So I'm going to do the top parts being sloped, because that's actually pretty easy. I'm going to select all these top parts, and then what I could do is I could fillet them and push them in. But what I could also do, which I think is a little cooler, and I'd like to use it for this, is use the chamfer tool, and that's basically a fillet, but it's just square, or just 45 degree angle. So I'm just going to do that for 1 millimeter on the inside, and then I'm going to do it on this side as well. Actually, I won't do it on this side. I think it looks better without it. And I'll do it on these little sections as well, because I think that would look pretty cool. So take all these, and then I'm just going to chamfer about 1 millimeter. Looks pretty good. Alright, so there's a bit of a modified rook. And then I'm just going to add my final gate, and that's going to be my rook done afterwards. Also, if you really wanted to, you could select all these and then chamfer these in to make them like cool looking bricks. Like if I set to 0.5, you can see right there, the bricks are sort of sloped inwards. I could do that, but like I don't really want to right now, so I'm just not gonna do it. All right, finally we have the gate. So how to make the gate is I'm just going to extrude it from one of these faces, but you might be asking, how am I gonna create a sketch? Because they're all round, I can't make a sketch. So there's this cool little construct I can do, which is the tangent plane. And I'm just gonna construct on like this one right here, and it's just gonna make a tangent plane. And then this is sloped, however, and I don't really want that, so I'm not gonna tangent on that actually. I'm gonna tangent on something else that isn't sloped. Let's do this one on the bottom right here. And you can see, now that I have that, that's not a sloped plane. So I should be able to just make a sketch on here and then make my little gate design. So let's think about how to make a gate. Well, gate's gotta be round, right? So let's do like 6 millimeters. And then go out by another 6 or 3 here. And then gate's gotta be wide. So that looks pretty good. Gate's gotta have thickness as well. So we're gonna go in with maybe 4.5 millimeters in here. And then we're just gonna bring this down right here and right here. Alright, that looks pretty good. And I'm just gonna trim these sections so they're easier to extrude. Alright, and then now all I have to do is push these two back. So I'll push this back first, and then I'm gonna make it join. And like you see this, you're like, why is it so far out? And I'll get to that in a second. Because what we can do is after we push this in, all the way in, I can really just push this back afterwards. So there you go. We're gonna push it back maybe maybe just 5 millimeters is enough. Push it back 5 millimeters. Take these two bottom parts and extrude these downwards so they meet with the bottom, and so they're flush, like so. And you see how it's flush now? Now we just have to do the gate. For the gate, I'm thinking sort of like a double door design, so that's what I'm gonna do here. And so, I'm just gonna extrude this back, and I'm just gonna move it in like about to there. Now, move it in another millimeter. Alright, that looks pretty good. So these aren't connected yet, but I don't actually want to connect them yet because there's a few things we need to do first. So if you can imagine, if I were to slice this in half, there's still a hole here because I moved the gate in afterwards. So I just get rid of this body, make it invisible, extrude this one back, and then make it visible again. And now that should fill in any of the gaps that were there. And if I press join, it should be good. And just to test if there were any gaps, I'm going to extrude this upwards in a cut. So we're just going to look, are there any gaps? No, looks good. Alright, so now that gate's done, I'm just going to add my double door design. So that means that I'm just going to do like something like this in the middle, and then a rectangle. Maybe go out like 0.2 millimeters. Make this go another 0.4 out. Alright, And I should be able to extrude that inwards. And then I'm going to put like two big lock looking things on the outside. So I'm going to make this 1 millimeter and then 0.8 on the inside. And then maybe like a rectangle on here. Center rectangle. Make it 0.2 by 0.2. Alright, so now that that's done on one side, oops, I accidentally trimmed it away. But as I was saying, now that this is done on one side, I can actually use the mirror tool and mirror all these little parts to the other side. So select this as my mirror line, and now I don't have to make another one. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to finish the sketch, and I'm going to push these two back about a 0.1 millimeters. Looks good. And my sketch disappeared again, so I just got to open it again, and then select these two and bring them out a little bit. Let's go 0.15. Now, if you can imagine, the big locks on a door are like square, so I'm gonna fill these a little bit inwards, like 0.5. And then I don't like how this is just going in, so I'm gonna chamfer these outwards. And that looks pretty good for our gate. So I'm just gonna zoom out, see if everything looks fine. And I think personally that this looks like a pretty cool tower. So I'm just gonna save this as my rook piece. So save this as rook, and then that should be good. Alright, so just a reminder, if you need any help with like making any of these tutorials, or just you're doing your own CAD and you need help, you can ask any of our Maker Club officers and they'd be happy to help you. And I'll see you in the next one for the last and final chess piece tutorial.